Hi everyone, welcome to this interview with Patrick Howley of So Let's Talk. I'm just going to read a short description about the organization. So Let's Talk was founded in Manchester as a platform for conversations and support for issues faced by hospitality industry workers with a particular focus on mental health. And he was motivated, as you'll hear, by his own experience in the drinks industry. And he recognized the need for a supportive network in which these issues and solutions for these problems could be discussed. So thank you, Patrick, for being here. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for inviting me. I'm excited.
To set a context for the interview, my intention is to create a conversation around work-life balance in the industry. It affects every aspect of our lives, but we don't give any space to this conversation. And if you work for a food business, it's probably likely that you think it's something that's dependent on the rota you're assigned, and it's out of your hands, perhaps. If you're an employer, you maybe want to avoid discussing work-life balance because it some way affects the team work ethic. But the risk is that you have team members underperforming if they are showing up to work with a time bomb ticking in some other parts of their lives. And at least in the kitchen, I'm not sure whether it applies across the industry, but the culture of self-sacrifice and martyrdom very much is there.
Very much so.
And it just complicates everything and adds a layer of, again, we don't know what to do really with this issue of work-life balance. And I wanted to speak to you to add your wisdom and ideas and insights from your work and your experience as a bartender and general manager to this conversation. So thank you again.
Thank you so much. Yeah, it's a really interesting conversation, one that I'm hugely passionate about. We're just in the process at the moment of writing training decks for So Let's Talk around healthy operations, which focuses on creating work-life balance and how you can really instill a culture inside of your business that's going to help the organization move forward. And I know that we're going to be asking and answering a lot of questions that are going to be really potent, especially right now.
And what was your journey to creating, just so that I get to introduce you to the Love Letters to Chefs community?
So my journey, I've been in hospitality for the last 14 years. So I started glass collecting at a working men's club in Burnley, which is a little northern working town. At the age of 15, my dad was one of the chairmen, and I was glass collecting, and then I was KPing at a small restaurant at the weekend. So I had two jobs and I was 15 years old. So I was thrown in quite at the deep end with hospitality. A little bit of background is hospitality has been my career, but I'm also from a family of coaches, so neuro-linguistic programming coaches. So I was introduced into the world of mindset and personal development really early on, did some work with Tony Robbins and his team as a youngster, which was a blessing and a curse to be so self-aware. So with my career, I went from glass collecting to being a general manager really quickly. I was 19, 20, 21 when I had my first management gigs. I had a team of 60 people. We were turning over big money, and I had absolutely no right to be in those positions. In any other trade in the world, you wouldn't have that kind of growth so quickly. And that was just due to my sheer tenacity, but also a little bit of pushing from people who wanted me to be in those positions, because it works for the business. And I was signing contracts that said that I was working more than 60 or 70 hours a week, and I was happy to do so because I was excited to be in the industry. So I spent 10 years traveling around the UK, consulting at some amazing bars, general managing some amazing restaurants and bars at the same time. So on the outset, I was semi-successful. On the outset, I was a young man who was climbing the ladder inside of hospitality, but in reality, I was in a perpetual cycle of just turmoil. I fell into some really destructive habits really early on. So recreational drug use, really unhealthy relationship with alcohol, and poor nutrition, lack of sleep. For anybody listening, they probably sat there, if they've worked in the trade, nodding their head. It's something that is a societal norm within inside of the industry, and something that we'll be talking about going forward. But I did that cycle for 10 years. And towards the back end of last year, I was doing some consultancy at a pop-up bar in Manchester. And I went out for 3 days. I had next to no sleep. I was consuming a lot of substances. And I turned up to all my shifts and nobody recognized that I wasn't compos mentis, which was really, really scary. my tolerance levels were obviously so high that I could function on the outset. But actually I was really in a really dark place. So I got home after those 3 days and I was sat in my mum's spare room because I was in between rented accommodation, which was a normal for me. I used to pick up my stuff and move all of the time. And I thought to myself, I can't do this anymore. I actually can't live this life anymore. Um, which was a shame because obviously it's my purpose. It's all I've ever known is working inside of hospitality, but I had to leave. So then I got really frustrated. And I thought to myself, I've been doing this for 10 years plus and I've not had an avenue for help. I've worked in a lot of different styles of the industry. I've worked in SMEs, small independents, large corporates, and yet the only kind of support we do have is for when we are suffering. So my thought process was, what do we do to prevent the things that cause this suffering? I explain it a little bit like this. Imagine going to a job interview for a role that involves heavy lifting. And during that interview process, the interviewer letting you know that they're not going to train you on how to lift the heavy objects, but they will provide you with an amazing physiotherapist for when you inevitably hurt yourself. You'd question that way of working. And in the industry, we've got amazing organizations that provide support, but when we're struggling. And I wanted to work on prevention, not cure. So I got angry. I vented a little bit and I put out a post on the Manchester Bars page or the Manchester Hospitality page, which has 15,000 members inside of it, and it's a great community. And I said, look, I'm going to create a platform where we can openly talk about our mental health inside of the industry. Can I get a room and some coffees, and who'd like to come along? And this is not a space I've ever worked in before. That post got a huge amount of traction, a lot of likes and a lot of comments. It's a conversation that's not had, but one that's been causing a lot of suffering for a long time inside of the industry. I actually signed off the post with "So let's talk." ... And one of my friends who I've worked with previously, who's an amazing designer, saw the sign off, created a logo without me asking for it, and sent it over and said, "I think you should use that for a business name." So that's where "So let's talk" came from. We then recognized that something needed to be done off the traction. So I got to networking, which is something that I love doing, and connected with quite an eclectic group of people inside of Manchester, people who had a common goal, but also had some form of influence on the industry. So we had the directors of the Female Hospitality Network, the directors of the Manchester Hospitality Network. We had people who have worked in the trade, but then moved on to be therapists or counsellors or PTs or yoga instructors. And then we had some real grassroots level workers, chefs, bartenders. I wanted to get a real good mix of people with a wide variety of experiences within inside of the trade. So then we got to work. We sat down in a little cocktail bar in Manchester. We said, what we're going to do? How can we make the biggest impact on the industry and start to create a positive culture change? So we started to talk about the things that affected our life, which was sleep, nutrition, exercise, mental health, the business of health. So how our CEOs and our MDs inside of the businesses that we've worked in, how they weren't educated and didn't know what it was that we needed to feel valued, or how to change that really archaic way of working that we've been perpetuating inside of hospitality for so long. So to fast forward a little bit, we did that. We've now got training decks that we've partnered with Healthy Hospo to create. We've got sleep training decks that are written by Nick Littlehales, who's Man United sleep coach, Cristiano Ronaldo's sleep coach. We've got mental health training created by Craig Fern, who advises the European Union on mental health. But one thing that we were really, really certain on is that we didn't want to invite experts to come in to talk to hospitality professionals, because we wouldn't resonate with them. They've never worked in the hospitality industry. They've never walked a day in our shoes. They don't know what we've experienced. So what we did is we took those trainings, we made them relevant to the industry, and then we delivered them from a place of experience. And that was really important for us. So that every person that works with So Let's Talk now delivers our trainings from a place of experience. And we've worked with amazing organizations, Mowgli, New World Trading Company, The Alchemist. So it's been a bit of a whirlwind. That's where we're at. And we've got a lot of other strings to our bows, but to keep it short, our main focus is to 86 to silence and provide those preventative and holistic trainings.
And it's very interesting that you highlighted the problem exists when you work, well, outside of management and in management. It's not restricted to any one part of the hierarchy. Everyone goes through challenges of their own. Just a scale will be different.
It's and it's a really big vocal point for So Let's Talk. We work on a top-down, bottom-up culture. We recognize that a culture of a business starts with the owners. And if they have lost touch with the reason why they got into the industry and what they love so much about it, then how can they expect their team members to recognize and know the culture of the business? If they are from a different generation, and I don't want to ramble too much here, but generations blame each other. And what we find is that on board level, there's a generation gap between the board level and the grassroots level workers. And Gen Zs may call boomers archaic and bigots or whatever it may be. And then boomers will call Gen Zs snowflakes and you want too much from us. And that lack of communication breaks down a culture inside of a business. And what it actually starts is, I remember the first time that one of my chefs, when I was training to be a manager, we had to do all parts of the business. So I worked in the kitchen for 3 months. And the chef said to me, well, I had to do that to earn my stripes, so therefore you're going to have to do it. So I had to work all of these hours and sacrifice my personal life to earn my stripes, so therefore you're going to have to do the same. And it's that mentality that is perpetuating these really destructive cycles. And it's something that we're looking to change. But going back to generations, what we hope to do is initiate conversations so that people listen to understand instead of listen to respond, so that all parts of the organization can share their experiences. I would have loved one of my managers in the early stage of my career to come to me and say, look, I'm struggling with this, or I'm finding this really difficult. It would have allowed a comfort zone for me to go, well, my manager's suffering with this. I can actually talk about it now. So without going too deep into it, but that's kind of where we're at. But 100%, it's something that we're really passionate about working on.
Thank you for that. And how do you see the challenge of work-life balance affecting the industry within the context? I think you've touched upon it, but work-life balance itself, how does it?
Yeah, it's work-life balance. It's not something that's talked about in the trade. As a hospitality professional, from my own personal experience, if I wasn't inside of work serving food and drink, I was outside of work spending more money than I had on food and drink. And all of my friends were hospitality professionals. So they were all perpetuating destructive cycles themselves. All we ever talked about was the industry. All I ever knew was the industry. I never connected with what made me a human being. I was always a human doing. I was doing service. I was doing menu development. I was doing work. I was talking about work. So there was no balance. There was no balance in my life. It was all hospitality. And unfortunately, that led to a lot of negativity. Now, we're not bashing the industry. We're here to help. We're not here to wag a finger. But it's so apparent through the statistics inside of hospitality that we've got some really archaic ways of working that really don't serve as well. So we have a training that's called Let's Talk About Sex, which is sleep, eat, connect, and sweat. And it's the basis of what makes us human. So we talk about what kind of sleep routine do we have in the industry. We're so used to making sleep the devil. It's a really, really negative term for us. And even in society, you'll hear personal development speakers talk about sleep is for those people who are broke, or sleep when you're dead. And we're so used to making it a negative when actually it's a human need. It's one of our human needs. We need sleep. And then we talk about connection. So how do we connect with ourselves? How do we connect with other people? But then also, how do we connect with nature? And in the trade, I used to spend so much time either in the kitchen or on the floor or behind the bar that I'd never go out for a walk, or I'd never be connected with nature. But then also, I'd never connect with myself. I'd never give myself an opportunity to recognize my emotions, which is why it built up to that really dark stage of my life. So being really clear about the answer, our work-life balance, sleep is something that we don't talk about, but something that we don't get a lot of. We love serving great food to other people, but feed ourselves with really poor food. Now that might be a generalization, but I spent a lot of my time getting scraps off the pass, sitting next to the KP in the back alley whilst he was having a cigarette, eating within 15 minutes, and then going back in to do another 500 covers for the nighttime service and running the pass. It's wild when you think about it like that. And now I class making food as personal development for myself. It's one of my non-negotiables. cooking for me is a way that I serve myself. It's a way that I make sure that I'm valuing myself as a human being, so I can connect with the food that I'm eating. We're so used to eating food out of packages or eating from quick takeaways that we forget to connect with the food that we're eating. And then how we connect with other people is a powerful tool. So we never get trained on how to have a conversation about our mental health, or how to initiate a conversation about mental health, or how can you open up about your mental health. So all of these things are where we completely break down any form of work-life balance. If on the outset you were to approach a young person and say to them, how do you fancy working inside of an industry that's going to make you work 50 to 60 hours a week? It's one of the lowest paid trades in the UK. You're going to lose connection with your family, and you're only going to be able to connect with people inside of the industry. And plus, there's a massive environment where you're going to lend itself to drink and drugs. How does that sound to you? The response would be no. And the only reason why we do it is because we have a purpose. It's something that we're emotionally attached to. You'll find a lot of chefs absolutely love their work because they love making people happy through food, and they love making food. And that's what drives us. It's that purpose, but that purpose can also drive us to disconnect with a work-life balance, right?
Definitely. And do you see any reason for, I mean, there are resources out there, yoga classes, trainings on mindfulness, lots of things, lots of help that's out there. But is there anything that you see that maybe someone in hospitality, I don't know, I don't want to say prevents them from reaching out for those things, or hesitates to reach out for solutions outside hospitality that might help? Is there anything, do you have any insights on what is that missing step? What is that step that they need to take?
Yeah, so with our mantra, it's to 86 to silence. So for people who work in hospitality, if you don't know, then 86 is a bar call or a call inside of hospitality. That means something's run out. So for us, we want to 86 to silence. It's a lack of conversation, and it's a lack of listening to understand instead of listening to respond. It's that thing again. What I believe happens is we provide as an industry what we think our teams need instead of what it is that they actually want, because we don't initiate those conversations. And that stops the breakdown in communication. And that's happened for so long, and it's not been a conversation for so long or ever. That actually creates an environment where people don't want to speak. I didn't talk about my own mental health because I was worried. I was worried that I wouldn't be able to reach that goal of being an area manager or having my own venue if people heard that I was struggling in some way, shape or form. It was more of a weakness. So I didn't talk about it. And that was one of the barriers. The other barrier is, if nobody else is talking about it, then will I be sacked if I start to value myself and put my health and well-being first? If I was to say no to a contract that meant that I might have to work more than 60 hours a week, or that I might have to come in on my day off to do delivery because the chef is burnt out and hungover and I have to count the stocks that day, but it's meant to be my day off, or I'm no longer going to accept the fact that I'm going to be given a rota a day before I'm meant to be working that week, so I have no time to plan my life. That fear of not being able to value yourself is really powerful. Another thing that is a topic that's not talked about on the media, in the media, we were classed as low-skilled workers, and that was bandied about so much, that hospitality is low-skilled work. And if you're constantly hearing that your profession and your purpose is low skilled, and that's being fed to you, then you're going to stop valuing yourself. And then it's going to give you the freedom to be able to go, okay, well, if nobody else values what we'll do, then we'll keep on living this kind of pirate rockstar mentality lifestyle, and we'll stop valuing ourselves as human beings, and we'll just crack on with what we've been doing for generations. So I do believe that it's that lack of conversation, and it's that lack of creating a safe space where it's now wise to value your health and well-being over everything. But that's the space that we're creating. Talking about your mental health and talking about your physical health being in the same conversation, in the same vein. Going to a PT or going to a therapist being the same thing. One's just for your mental health and one's for your physical. So that's what I believe is the breakdown. I don't believe the conversation is as rife as it should be.
I think you raised an important point, at least from the point of view of being a chef, the low skilled part. So let's not look at anything else. Let's shine a spotlight only on the things that make me look good, and everything else takes a back seat because maybe I'm not as good as it, or I don't as good at it as I am as cooking. Sorry.
It's true. It's
So
true.
let's not talk about anything else that makes me look bad.
Yeah, yeah. It's sorry. So just from the question. So it is talking about anything else that makes me look bad. Sorry, what was the question there?
No, I was meaning the point that you raised about low skilled. It sort of
Yeah.
makes them feel like, okay, let's not shine a light on anything else that
Yeah.
where I look like the best chef or the best chef I could be. Let's
Yeah.
not shine a light on anything else because
Oh,
that's going to take off the attention.
yeah, exactly right. So if I'm classed as low skilled, if I was to kind of spotlight any other potential what people might deem as weaknesses in any other areas, then it's going to take away from the fact that I'm an amazing chef or that I'm an amazing bartender, which is, I mean, it's dangerous. It's a dangerous mentality, and it's something that we are changing. Although this might seem like quite a lot of doom and gloom that I'm talking about, what we have recognised with So Let's Talk is such a change in mentality. So we're talking to a lot of CEOs, a lot of MDs, a lot of small business owners who are now starting to completely change their mentality and think less about bottom line and more about how they can invest inside of their team. Because I mean, it's wild that it's something we need to talk about, but unless your team are healthy and well, then your business is never going to flourish.
Mm.
You can have the best chef in the world, but if that chef is burnt out and sad and tired, they're never going to bring the best self to work. You can have an amazing bartender, but if that bartender has worked 75 hours and not had a home cooked meal in 3 weeks and not talked to his mum or dad or her mum and dad in 5 days, then they're not going to bring the best self to work. And one of the things that we talk about is the first question that we're asked when we come into the venue. Working in some organizations, we used to get asked if we were on our marks, which meant, do you have your bar blade, your waiter's friend, 3 lighters, 3 pens? It meant, do you have everything you need to come to work? In the kitchen, it was kind of come in 15 minutes early and make sure you've got your clean chef wipes with you, have you sharpen your knives. And they were the first questions that you get asked, when actually the first question that needs to be asked is, how much sleep did you get last night? When was the last time you had a home cooked meal? How are you feeling today? And without saying, okay, how are you feeling today? All of these kind of questions that we can just, I mean, that's such a simple change. That's such a simple change that you can ask somebody the difference, because the tools mean nothing if the person using them is broken, right? The tools don't work unless the person functioning and working them can't do it. So yeah, that's it's a really powerful message, I hope.
Is there one piece of advice you would give to someone working in hospitality that will help them with their work-life balance?
Yeah, and I love this question, and it might seem quite surface level this, but when we think about it, it's not. We prioritize ourselves. So prioritize your health and well-being over everything. It's not selfish, it's wise. When we start to make decisions based purely on how it's going to affect our health and wellness, it's going to completely change how you view and how you work inside of hospitality. So saying no to a contract that's more than 60 hours, or saying no to overworking in more shifts because it's going to have a negative impact on your mental health, or saying no to a manager that might want to push you in a direction you don't want to go inside of. This is the main vocal point. Initiate conversations when you're feeling like you want to. Initiate them with people that serve you well, or initiate them with people who are professionals when you need to. That's paramount. But it starts with the prevention. So it starts with, how do you prevent getting to those stages? And that's by making your health and wellness a priority. One of the biggest questions we're asked at the moment is, how do I maintain the positive habits I've created during lockdown when I go back to work? People have been able to connect with themselves during this period. On the whole, it's been quite negative, but actually some of the positives are, we've been able to cook ourselves some food, and we've been able to reconnect with things that make us human beings, and some of the things that we love doing, whether it be reading a book or whatever it may be. And one of the anxieties is, how do I do that when I get back to work? And that's by making it a priority, creating some structure for yourself and saying the word no. I was nodding my head so much as a young manager because I wanted to impress, that I burnt myself out. So saying no, that's not good for me. I won't put myself in that situation. I'll take back what I can control, which is how I eat, sleep, connect, and sweat.
I love that saying no. Me too. Definitely adopt that.
Mm.
And one thing that employers can do to support the well-being of their staff, do you have any insights, like the first thing that comes to your mind?
Yeah, of course. So initiating conversations is really powerful, but sharing your process can also be really powerful. By as a manager opening up about your own experiences allows a space for people to be able to do the same. And also, again, if you're not prioritizing your health and wellness, you can't expect other people to do the same with inside of your business. It starts with you. So for me, the first initial question would be, what do I do as a manager to work on myself as a human being? What do I do that's serving me well, and what can I share with my team? And if you don't have that knowledge and you don't feel comfortable, that's where So Let's Talk comes in. That's where we're here to support organizations on how to initiate conversations about mental health and how you can implement different ways of working that's going to create a healthy environment for you and your teams. But as a manager, initiate conversations, create clear communications with your team, listen to understand, don't listen to respond. Just because you've never experienced it yourself doesn't mean that their experiences aren't valid. And the world's changing a lot. There's a new wave of bartenders, chefs coming in who want to live life differently. They don't want to be back in those archaic ways of working that don't serve as well. Tom Kerridge said it on a podcast recently, where he's had experiences himself with overconsumption of alcohol, and he's now talking with his teams and saying, look, this was my experiences, but I never want anybody else to have to go through that. That's powerful. It's really powerful.
Thank you so much for these insights. And I just have one last question. Which is the best way for Love Letters to Chefs community members to find out more about So Let's Talk? Would you recommend the website being the best resource?
So we're in the process. We've actually just changing up the website and creating into a lifestyle page, which is in the process, and it's going to happen very, very soon. The best way to contact us is on our social media platforms. So on our Instagram, which is @So Let's Talk, and then 3 underscores. It's a bad marketing decision from me, but yeah, @So Let's Talk, 3 underscores, or on our Facebook. Our website is amazing, but it will be changing very soon. So you can contact us on any of our social media platforms or our website, which is just soletstalk.co.
Wonderful. And there's something, you're building something in
Yeah.
your website, right?
Yeah, we're building something exciting. In brief, what's happening is I wanted to create a lifestyle page for the hospitality industry where hospitality professionals could share their experiences and add some value to their audience. I wanted to give a voice to micro influencers. Nobody really resonates with the big corporate world anymore. We recognize they might not be doing good things in the world. So what we wanted to do was create a platform where people inside of hospitality could share their knowledge and their values and their experience in the hope that somebody else gets some value from it. So we either do that in video format, we do that in written content, or we are going to be doing it as advertorial pieces. What I mean by that is we're not pushing consumerism. Obviously, hospitality is not in the great financial position right now, and actually, as a whole, as an industry, disposable income as a bartender is not something that we have a lot of. So we wanted to be spotlighting products that are sustainable and ethical, that are going to really aid your health and well-being in some way, shape, or form. So we've got things like mattress toppers that you can get on finance to help build your credit, but then also aid better sleep. And then things like AMS alarm clocks that you can get at a massively discounted rate that will help you wake up with natural light. So we're focusing really on health and well-being, but obviously yourself as being a part of that, it's been a blessing meeting you, and the pieces that you've sent across are amazing.
Thank you. Thanks, Patrick, for giving us so much to think about.